You control it.
I'd like to call the Public Works Committee meeting to order for November 29th, 2016. First order of business, roll call and determination of a quorum.
Doyle. Estes. Here. Solomon. Here. Drew.
Here.
Nordstrom.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Brenda. Next is the adoption of the agenda.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Jason Solomon makes a motion to adopt the agenda. Second by Brad Estes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is adopted. Now is the time for general public comment, a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken by the committee on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by a unanimous vote of the aldermen present. I have no forms in front of me for general public comment. General public comment is closed. Now we go on to the consent items, items 1 through 14. Public comment is open on items 1 through 14, and I have no speaker slips. So public comment is now closed. Okay, now it's time for the members of the committee to ask for removal from the agenda of any items they wish to discuss. Jason? Okay, excuse me. Alderman Solomon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could pull item number 12, please.
Alderman Estes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to pull item number 5 just so I could ask Mr. Tech a question. Thanks.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda, the consent agenda with the exception of number 5 and number 12? Nordstrom and Solomon seconds. Okay. All right. So now we go on to item number 5. Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign? I'm getting some help here since this is the first time I've chaired this committee. So thank you, gentlemen. Okay, first item is number 5, Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Rapid City and South Dakota Game Fish and Parks and the West Dakota Water Development District and the Black Hills Fly Fishers for the Canyon Lake Dam sediment removal. And I go to Richie Nordstrom. Okay. Alderman Estes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve, just like if I get a second. For discussion. Thank you. May I ask Dale Tech a question?
Of course.
Dale, I'm glad to see this on here. And originally the sediment removal, I think, was a part of the contract, and then we had such a wet year and we couldn't get the Canyon Lake dried out. So looks like we're going to have this sediment removal project moving forward. Is there a timeline when you think the Game Fish and Parks, have they indicated when they might be able to do this?
I haven't heard. I think they're going to try to do it as soon as possible once they purchase the equipment. I think they're looking to do it right away. So I would hope perhaps this spring or maybe even in the summer would be a good opportunity for them to do that. They're going to be very mindful of any spawning season or any negative effects to Canyon Lake and Rapid Creek. So I'm sure they're going to schedule their work around any impacts it may have to the fishery that could be impacted.
So if I understand it, the City of Rapid applied for a grant, and we're gonna turn those grant funds over to the Game Fish and Parks. The Black Hills Fly Fishers and Western Dakota Water Development District, we're all pulling the money together. Game Fish and Parks is going to buy a dredge, and they'll self-perform that work. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I see that as a huge plus going down range, because now there's a dredge around here to do the work, and B, the company doing the dredge work is a company that's mindful of our habitat and the fishery. So
absolutely.
I see it this is a huge, although maybe the dredging has been 2 years later than we wanted, going forward, it'll be a huge plus.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield.
Seeing no further comments, the motion on the floor is to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We move on to item number 12, authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the agreement between the City of Rapid City and Pyrotechnic Display, Inc. for annual fireworks displays in 2017, 2018, and 2019. Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could ask maybe a question of, oh, yeah. All right, I move to approve this. Before I get started. Thank you. If I could ask a question of our fire department, please. Madam Chair?
Yes.
All right.
Continue.
Good afternoon. So have we had any concerns about this last year? This last year was the first year we had the fireworks back on after a little sabbatical, so to speak. And just curious if we had any concerns out of the ordinary with fire related to the fireworks show?
Is his mic on?
There we go.
How's that?
Better, thank you.
Actually, you know, it's really based season by season. You never quite know what the moisture trend is going to do to us. But last year we didn't have any issues overall. We always have a certain amount of problems that arise throughout the various neighborhoods and around surrounding the city regarding consumer-based fireworks. But that particular location did work out well. It worked for us in the past. We've downsized some of the shell sizes, and so we've tried to really kind of accommodate those dry components.
So you have no concerns about us approving this? And keep moving forward?
Summertime, the
Major
wintertime show
concerns?
was very nice because we didn't have to deal with that,
Got
but no, we can continue to move forward with that. So.
Okay, thank you. I'll yield the floor.
If I may add something here as chair, I did some research on this back before we approved it for last year, and the technology in fireworks has improved to the point where they burn out more quickly before hitting the ground, so they're not as hot as they used to be. So, you know, actually fireworks move on too as far as technology and safety. So I can certainly lend my voice to this as far as approval. So the motion on the floor is, oh, excuse me, Richie Nordstrom.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think you have a motion yet, so I'll make that motion to approve. No. You did? I did make a motion. Okay. Right.
Okay, Jason Solomon made the motion to approve, and Brad Estes.
Didn't hear a second.
Brad Estes was second. Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All opposed, same sign? And the motion passes. Now we're on to non-consent items, items 15 through 17. Item 15, I guess I'll just go ahead and take this one because my name is attached to it. It's the Minnaloosahan Senior Center roof repair. They have been experiencing difficulties with their roof for the last 2 or 3 years. They have some patching that needs to be done, and I got them 3 estimates. 2 of them were in the $1,000 range, which were just really quick fixes. The other one was $17,000 or thereabouts, which was a more comprehensive fix. However, this roof is looking at probably a full replacement within the next 10 years. And I think it was Brad Estes that mentioned that it could be on the CIP schedule. Maybe not you? Okay, anyway. It was mentioned to me that it should be on the CIP schedule if it's really going to be replaced in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm giving you credit where it's not due. Okay, thank you. So, however, it is my understanding that it's up to the Minnaloosahan Center to make those minor replacements and also to protect their building from further damage by the leaking that's going on in the roof, and the mayor has reminded them of their obligation and that they should choose one of the, I don't know, the $1,000 estimates to repair their roof so they, you know, make sure they make it through the next 5 years before they get on the CIP schedule. And that's my report, and I have a couple of aldermen that are ringing in here. So Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me acknowledge your report, if I make that motion. And then retain the floor?
Retain the floor, I think, yeah.
Yeah, what I was reading over was on the different quotes on what you presented to us, and the first quote looks to be acceptable, if that's the direction that the Mineral Ozone Group is headed for, because it is very possible that this could fall under the CIP government buildings. It's possible, meaning that there is some concepts coming forward to reintroduce as maybe CIP reform. So in the world nowadays, nothing's guaranteed anymore. So we want to make sure that it stays on the front burner. We get to see this again probably next March, April is when we're going to do our next CIP 5-year budget plan. I'll yield.
Thank you, Alderman Nordstrom, and I would just like to add that I think that we really do an exceptional job of supporting our senior centers here in Rapid City, and I really want to see this on the CIP schedule if that can happen. So thank you for your comments. The motion on the floor is to acknowledge my report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so it's acknowledged. Now we're moving on to item 16, the sidewalk discussion. This is continued from the November 15th, 2016 Public Works Committee meeting. So please, I'll hand this over to Dale Tech. Dale, would you like to give your presentation?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Madam Chair. This item actually came from a few months ago. Had significant discussion about sidewalks and the placement of sidewalks and the approval of variances of sidewalks and where sidewalks should be installed, where they shouldn't be installed, and staff was directed based on that discussion to bring back areas in town where sidewalks could be and should be installed. Staff looked at many areas, but primarily focused on our major corridors because they serve not only as major vehicular corridors, but could also serve as major pedestrian corridors. So there's a listing attached to the agenda, I believe, of 6 areas that the city staff has determined would be a good areas to install sidewalks. The number 1 area is Deadwood Avenue. I know just from personal experience, this item has been before the council many times in the last 9 years. So Deadwood Avenue is, I believe, mostly built out, if not completely built out. There are certainly demand paths that show on the sides of the road where people are walking. There is residential development up north off of North Plaza Drive that doesn't have a connection to Omaha Street or any way to get down to the city without actually walking adjacent to the road or in the road. So Deadwood Avenue is the number 1 area of concern. Rushmore Business Park, I think this was kind of the area that this whole sidewalk discussion started based on a variance by a person that was building a new facility out there. We looked at that business park, and it's kind of developed in 2 phases. There's the old original phase. We believe that is mostly built out. There are a couple vacant lots, however, we believe that would be an appropriate place to place sidewalks. And then the second phase, which would be north of Homestead Street, I believe, where they're not completely built out. However, there's been significant investments in businesses up there, and there's no sidewalks. Continuing further on down the list, East North Street between Campbell and Anamosa. Once again, demand paths along that stretch of the road. Disc Drive, south of the mall, just on the south side of the mall. A portion of that is probably going to be city's responsibility to install because there's no adjacent property owner. It's public right-of-way that abuts the interstate. However, there's demand paths. I've seen people walking along there as well. And then another chunk of east-north from Anamosa down to Eglin. Once again, visual evidence of people walking in that area with no sidewalks. And then item number 6, or the last area, is Heartland Business Park. Once again, there has been many requests for variances to the installation of sidewalks in that area. Some people have installed them, some people have not. We believe it's time to probably install sidewalks there, and then the future people that come in for building permits, they would be required to install them to make it a contiguous sidewalk system. So I'll stand for any questions. Actually, before I do that, the direction to staff was to bring back some areas. If the city council so decides to start ordering a sidewalks, there's a process that we're going to have to go through for that. I'm not going to be able to educate you completely on what that process is today. However, we'll have to send out notifications, allow the people the opportunity to put sidewalks in if you do order it. If they don't install them, then we'll have to set a cutoff date, and then the city would have to move forward with an assessed project to install the sidewalk, approve an assessment roll, and then they would be assessed the cost of those sidewalks over a 5-year period. So there's a lengthy process involved once you go down the road of ordering in sidewalks. So I wanted you to keep that in mind, whatever your decision is to move forward here. We'd be happy to entertain that.
Chair recognizes Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the staff did an excellent job putting this presentation together with especially, I kind of believe this is a good sampling of what we have to do within the city of Rapid City. And I suspect there will be more in conjunction with what we are seeing here on this. And just going back just a little ways in our history here, I also was one of those people that felt like we should not be installing sidewalks that would lead to nowhere. However, since the walk audit has come out, and then we do have support from the Planning Commission or the Planning Department and also citizens of the community that were involved in that walk audit, it kind of helps us, give us more backing or more support from the public that says we need to have sidewalks installed no matter where we're at. Yeah, we'll have to go through some guidelines where sidewalks is not appropriate, and I'm just kind of thinking, for example, a steep grade that a sidewalk would probably not be appropriate. For example, if the street got ice covered or the sidewalk got ice covered and snow covered, and especially in that areas, that may be an exception we can look at. So another concept that's coming forward is whenever a building permit comes through, we'll start seeing these sidewalks that lead to nowhere coming forward more and more. So we have to get away from that argument or rationale as not being acceptable because of this walk audit is one reason. There's others, but primarily we do have the support from the community that they would like to see more sidewalks in these areas. And with that, I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Alderman Estes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move to acknowledge.
I'll second.
And if I could, I thank you, Dale, for the report. I appreciate it very much. And you said you might not be able to answer all the questions, but I guess one of them I would like to be able to have an answer to on Monday night is that if we order in sidewalks, and knowing that if people don't self-perform by a certain date, then we have to put them in and do an assessment project. Do we have to know our funding source and at the time we order them in? And if so, what funding level? Do we have to have a funding level as if nobody self-performs?
My opinion is no, you don't need to know what the funding source is when you order them in. It is really up to the property owner to self-perform at that point. The next threshold would be then if you decide to move ahead with an assessed project, then you would need to know what the funding source would be to actually install the sidewalk so they could be assessed back to the property owners.
Okay, but I just want to remind my fellow council, if we do order them in and 40% of the people self-perform and then the magic date comes, we need to come up with the money and create an assessment project for the other 60%. So we will have to have a funding source at some point in time, knowing that probably not 100% of the people will self-perform.
I would like to add to that, the city does have a fund. It's called the SAB 28, and I believe SAB stands for Special Assessment Bond. There's a pot of money there that's exactly what it's for, is if the city does assess projects, we can use money out of this fund, and then as they pay their assessment, it goes back to replenish the fund. It's a revolving fund, if you will.
Thank you. I yield, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Good discussion. I have also a question for Dale Tech. You know, we have a lot of city speak that we use that, you know, the general public might not always understand. Were you using the term demand path? Is that what you were saying?
Correct.
Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I most certainly can. If you go out and look along a roadway that doesn't have sidewalk and you see a path that is worn through the grass down to the dirt where it looks like a person or an animal or something has been walking on, that's called a demand path. That shows that people are moving along, walking along, or riding a bicycle adjacent to the roadway in the grassed area where there's no sidewalk.
And that certainly lends to the credence of putting a sidewalk in there, seeing that it's already been used as such.
That's correct.
Well, thank you, because I think having a walkable community is really important, and it also intersects with our comprehensive plan, and I'd like to thank you for that work. I have a motion on the floor to acknowledge. Oh, excuse me, Jason Solomon, a late entry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dale, when you proposed these 6 areas for discussion, did you happen to check against the SAB 28 fund to see if that was enough funds to, I guess, pay for the majority of these? Or?
As I understand, there is not enough money in the SAB fund to do all of these projects.
Did you prioritize this list?
To some extent, we believe Deadwood Avenue is probably
Right.
the top priority, but beyond that, not necessarily, no.
Okay. Do you think you'll have, think we'll have maybe what's in that fund today at the next council meeting?
I most certainly can check the balance of that, yes.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. Yield the floor.
The motion on the floor is to acknowledge the report. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Acknowledgement carries, I guess. All right, we're on to the last item of the agenda, funding recommendations for the construction and improvement of Elm Avenue from its current southern terminus near Fieldview Drive for approximately 800 feet. Richie Nordstrom.
I'll get this started off, but I should very quickly yield to Public Works Director Dale Tech. We had a lot of conversation about this at the last CIP meeting, and Dale has got one way to express it as a short presentation on how we or the staff made some adjustments to the schedule for the construction of Elm Avenue, and how some of those projects are going to be rescheduled within the CIP. And if the people want to take a look at it, the item number 17, there is links attached that shows the schedule and the changes and what will have to take place so that we can get into construction of Elm Avenue. So with that, if I may yield it over to Dale Tech.
Dale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As part of direction by the council a few months ago, I had brought forward, I believe, 4 alternatives to fund this Elm Avenue extension, as there's a property owner down there that wants to develop their property and is willing to pay their fair share of Elm Avenue. A little background on it. There was a WARP that was signed for properties on the west side of the Elm Avenue. I believe 22 property owners would be affected by that. I gave 4 alternatives. One was a TIF, one was to do an assessed project, one was to look at capital improvement funds, and one was to look at utility support funds. The direction from council that night when we discussed the 4 alternatives was not to do a TIF and to not do an assessed project. And the utility support fund has no funding available, so that kind of fell back to the CIP. We presented at the last CIP meeting the plan where we've we've shuffled projects around to find funding for the Elm Avenue extension in the year 2017. So that just in a couple of months to have funds available for that project. We had to move around, I don't know, half a dozen or 8 projects in the plan. And when I say move around, we moved them out or moved them further into the future. They haven't been canceled, but they aren't going to be done when we had originally planned. I should also note that discussions with Pennington County, Deadwood Avenue north of the interstate is in pretty sorry shape, has been for quite some time. The county was looking for and is still looking to do a project on the portion that they have from the Meade County line to city limits. We believe it's important at this time to partner with them to make that happen. So we also squeezed Deadwood Avenue funding in there too for the city portion. So not just Elm Avenue, but the plan in front of you today also has funding identified for that North Deadwood Avenue. If any of you traveled that lately, I think you would understand the need to do something on that roadway. Anyway, so we brought forward a plan that shows after our 5-year period, we're still in the black. We still are going to get the projects done that were on the plan, but just not in the time that they had been anticipated. They'll eventually get done, but just more kicked down the road a little ways.
Okay. Chair recognizes Brad Estes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm all for North Deadwood Avenue getting something done, but I'm a little concerned about what kind of precedent. Dale and I know, we talked earlier, and I know you didn't really have an idea, but I'm really curious about how many other warps we have out there on streets that, if it gets fixed, that are set to be assessment projects for houses, you know, and the people don't, I mean, what kind of precedent? I mean, we really don't know I have a concern that we really don't know how big of a can of worms we're opening up here. Because, you know, well, it just is. So do you have any idea, would it be possible at all to even figure that out?
It would be very difficult and time-consuming to see exactly how many warps are out there. In the last 15, 20 years, it was a tool that was used to get platting done and to defer those improvements to a later date. I've got to think there are dozens of them out there. That's all the most accurate information that I can give you at this time, that there are likely dozens of them out there, if not more.
Thank you. You know, I'm just not 100% sure. You know, you did exactly what the council asked you to do that night. I mean, I don't know why we even sent it to you, because every funding mechanism was taken off the table other than going to CIP and shuffling other people's projects around. And so I commend you. I appreciate you did. I mean, your hands were tied. I just have a little bit of concern as to this could be just the tip of the iceberg of shuffling around our CIP. To protect assessed projects to unsuspecting people. So right now I'm going to yield. Thanks.
Chair recognizes Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll see if I can make a motion and see what happens with it. I'll make the motion to proceed using the Elm Street Avenue from CIP. And let me leave the motion at that right now, to approve the Elm Avenue construction as coming from the CIP.
Do I hear a second? Motion fails.
Okay.
We currently have no motion on the floor.
Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll go back to Richie Nordstrom.
If it's all right with the chair, I'll make a substitute motion to send to council without recommendation.
Jason Solomon seconds. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed, same sign. A motion to adjourn from Brad Estes.
I will second that.
Second by Jason Solomon. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned.